I think it's something that a lot of people aren't even aware of when they get into pharmacy. When I was fresh out of school, working out of retail like you would expect, the corner drugstore, it's something that never comes across your plate. But the world of specialty pharmacy is more unknown than some of the other facets, I would say. And we're talking high dollar, rare medications, the more dangerous drugs with serious side effects, the chemotherapy, that kind of stuff. Um, and to be able to sell these drugs, it's not like your standard blood pressure medications where it's available to everyone who is a licensed pharmacy who can get into that network. These are limited distribution drugs, and if you're a manufacturer and you have a specialty drug, you most likely have a limited distribution network. So they specifically want one or a handful of pharmacies to handle their medication, and they're only gonna pick the best of the best. They're not gonna tolerate anyone who's not up to snuff, right? So one of the ways they do this, and this is truly like the first barrier of entry to get into these network is do you have an accreditation? Do you have two accreditations? What do you do? What kind of accreditations are they? And that's truly the first step into network access as a pharmacy to even begin the business. I would go a step further than that actually, Brian, and say it's not an option. You have to. And the reason I say that is experience. So folks will come to us and say, "Hey, we want to get in this network, help us get accredited." And reaccreditation isn't for 3 more years. And then they would do nothing for 3 years and then come back and say, "All right, time to get reaccredited. By the way, we've done nothing." And by then it it's so much harder to get reaccredited than the initial accreditation, and I think that's something a lot of folks don't expect, and if you're relatively inexperienced as a, director of pharmacy making these decisions, this can sneak up on you. So, when you have these tasks, and it's very laid out, you have to do this task at this interval. You have to do this task, and you have to say in your P&P what the interval is, and then you have to document that you're doing it. Documentation is 9 tenths of the battle here. And some of those steps, some of those requirements, not only do you have to, attest that you're doing them. I'll give you an example: the PSVs, the license verifications. When you get those are date and time stamped from the boards of pharmacy. So you can't cheat that even if you wanted to. You can't lie about it. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. So if you're not keeping up with it, uh, you're gonna come back with either just a flat out refusal or a conditional accreditation where they say, "Okay, well, you're basically on probation until you can prove to us, and then we'll give you a full accreditation down the road." And you really don't wanna be in that position, and it's preventable. It's just when you go into it, you don't know what you don't know. Again, the primary focus, the key is you wanna keep in network, and that's your risk factor. That's number 1 above everything else. If you're not doing, specialty, if you don't need it for network access, then accreditation becomes a different tool altogether where it's saying that you're a leg up on all the other competitors, all the other pharmacies, and you can use that for, negotiating purposes. But when it comes to network access, that's truly the crux of it, I would say. Moving aside from just business wise and dollars and cents, all of the standards, like if you go through and look at them one by one, at the heart of them, what the accreditation organizations are trying to do, whether it's your ACHC, whomever, um, they're best practices. They really are. So at the end of the day, what's the name of the game is to help the patient. Like that's why any of us have jobs. Full stop. Right. And while you're in the midst of it and you're looking at some of the metrics you have to gather and you're wondering why are we doing this? We're just checking off boxes. At the end of the day, that's why these are best practices and we are trying to always improve the quality of service for the patient. So that sometimes, it's easy to get your eye off of the goal, but at the end of the day, that's why we're all here. So some of the most persistent challenges, so the documentation is number one, and truly why we created Accred Comply, which is one of our tools to help with this. Um, so having the organization with that much data, with just the recurring task, and the tasks are coming from, different silos within the company, there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So organization, documentation, and then, further in depth to getting some of that documentation can be challenging. One that jumps out just off the top of my head, shipping. Shipping is always a bit of a nightmare. So it's a little bit easier with the current standards than it's been in the past, but, sending out uh, shipment tests. So you'd say you go to an area, we ship to the Pacific Northwest. Well, we're going to set out uh, just an empty tote, basically, have some temperature monitors on it, and then we're going to see if it holds water. We're going to test our pack out. So doing that and keeping track of that has been notoriously difficult for folks in the past. So things like that are truly hurdles. As for what's in the marketplace now, traditionally there's been, consultants such as ourselves that can help folks get across it. And there's not a whole lot in terms of technology out there other than a cred comply through us. And that's why we built it. We needed a tool to help facilitate our own clients through it, and then by the end of building it, we said, "Oh, we have a product here." So we basically turned it loose for other folks to use too. But it, I mean, there's still so much uncharted territory out there to to be had. It's truly an amazing space to work in. I assume you're getting towards more things like pharmacists giving vaccines, pharmacists prescribing, that kind of thing. So the accreditations generally aren't talking to those items specifically. You'll see that come up more in like CE regulations. So like if you're a pharmacist, are you giving shots? And if so, you have to do an hour of vaccine CEs in state X, right? So a lot of things will be covered there. I mean, the accreditations at the end of the day for that kind of business model are truly honing in best practices like we talked about earlier. But in terms of, market access, that kind of thing, you're not going to see a whole lot of impact there for it. It's truly getting into network to begin with, where it's really the most bang for your buck, where it's the most powerful. And it's one of those things where if you're, a corner retail store and you're an independent, and you're really just, battling the $4 list, that kind of thing, you may not have $40,000 to go out and get an accreditation to say I'm better than the guy down the street. So it's one of those things where you need to evaluate your position in the market, where you are, where you want to be, and what's appropriate. And I mean, that's conversations that we have with folks all the time. I guess one thing that I think is pretty beneficial to the pharmacy industry is how the standards change from version to version. And I'll use Urac as an example because they've recently turned over from 5.0 to 6.0, right? And you see those standards change and you see them evolve with the times. And I know I talked about shipping earlier. They really changed shipping and the standards and what's required, I think, in a positive direction, not just for, pharmacies and workload management, but I think it also benefited them and their surveyors and their workload as well, and how difficult it is to to manage. So I think I think they do a pretty good job of evolving with the times and staying current. So it's always interesting to see what they change when the new standards come out. But that's something you really want to keep your ear to the ground with if you are one of these people where your company has tasked you with keeping up with accreditation. You want to know when those standards are coming and then what's changing within them.